Okay, so here we are with our circuit playground. What I'm going to be doing in this video is doing a model of the housing with some buttons and the like for it. I'm sort of just winging this, so I may run into some issues. I should be able to solve them if I do encounter them, but yeah, stuff may happen. Alright, so let's get started. So we have our circuit playground modeled here. It's got all our components on it, the switch, the buttons, reset, the ports. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to sort of model just a housing around this. This particular housing doesn't really have a specific purpose. I'm just going to show a couple techniques here. Hopefully yours will have significantly more form development than what I'm going to be doing on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with, I think, working on just sort of this top plane here. It's our actual top plane. I'm going to do this so that sort of the board itself sits into my lower housing, and then I'll build the top sort of housing around it. I may actually do this housing as one piece and then split it as well, just for funsies. So let's give this housing some sort of shape. Maybe it's sort of this circular shape with kind of a rectangle elongation. Maybe we'll blend these shapes a little bit. Let's do. Maybe we'll do it with some fillets actually. So let's put some dimensioning on this just to give it something. Whoa, already dimensioned. 75 millimeters there. Definitely with your dimensioning, make sure it's based off something, not just random numbers. Like what I'm doing. This dimensioning should come from some sort of form development that you go through, some sort of form development process. So I think this is going to be kind of our initial rough shape. This sort of circle square thing. And extrude this down a ways. Let's go with 10. And we're also going to go up, making sure we don't merge the result, but we'll go up. Let's have our top be slightly closer. So we're going to do a offset from surface, that surface, by 2 millimeters. So what this will do is when we actually end up hollowing this out, we'll leave a 2 millimeter top, and so this piece will actually fit right up against, that surface will actually fit right up against the internal housing, the top of the housing. We'll extrude that. Alright, let's smooth some of these out. We'll use some fillets here in this case. Give ourselves a bit of shape, if you will. Let's see, let's make that 10 or more. Real smooth. There we go. So we've got a bit of shape. And I think I'm going to actually add a little bit of a contour to the bottom here as well. I'm going to see if this will work. So I'm going to throw a line down here like this. And then we'll do a shape like that. We don't want these to be too thick. Actually, let's do a relationship rather than a Another dimension. We can set these two equal to each other as well. That one we're going to keep vertical. Whoops. There we go. And we'll go 20. A little more. Let's go 30. 35. There we go. Cool. So now we're going to extrude these out, and what we're going to try to do my hope was I could get them to sort of match that shape. Would have been nice. There are ways of doing that with some surface modeling things, but I'm just not really going to get into it. So what I am going to do is do an up to vertex. That way, we'll do direction 2, same thing. We'll just end up trimming these off so that they're down to the right. Whoops. Down to the right size. Let's try that again. That was weird. Maybe I clicked on something wrong. There we go. We also want that one. And direction 2. There we go. Perfect. We can do a quick sketch there. And this is really easy. We just convert entities, extrude cut through all. There we go. A little bit more shape to this thing now. There's some grips down here of some sort. Now we can throw on a bit more fillet action. There we go. And finally, we're going to run some fillets. Whoa, little large there. Throw some shape on there. That's going to need to be slightly smaller. There we go. So now we've got some bit of contour to this thing. So it's not just a square sort of extruded shape. So we have a bit of shape to it now. Kind of fun. So the next thing we're going to do is split it, and then we're going to sort of get our mounting features in, then do some buttons as well, and some switches, and some other things. So let's take a look at what the inside of this looks like. We're going to do a section view by just clicking that section view up at the top. So now we have a section view, we can see where our board sort of is sitting in this. And I think what we'll do is we'll just sort of split along, probably just along that top plane will be just fine for this design today. So we're going to select the top. You don't necessarily have to have your board sit sort of in this position. You could have, you know, the top be far higher up and so that the board drops in more. You could have a whole variety of other shapes. There are a lot of different ways to do this. I may actually show two techniques here. I may do one and then go back and do another, just to sort of demonstrate a couple options for a different appearance. But first we're just going to do sort of the standard split kind of setup. So what I'm going to do is select my top plane, go to Features, Split. There we go. So the trim tool, so we're going to cut bodies. It's going to flip out, and because it's also cutting through the board as well, but we just want to click the two housings, split. So now we've got two bodies, our bottom and our top. In this case, I actually think shell will work quite well for sort of hollowing these out rather than trying to do it manually. So let's go ahead and do that. So we can come out of our section view, go to split shell. We're going to do a 2mm shell, which is a nice structural thickness. So we now have a nice 2mm shelled bottom. And bring this guy back. Real quickly, I'm going to throw all of these into a folder for the board. Makes life a little easier. And let's shell this guy. Although we are going to do some different things to the sort of this upper surface in a bit. So we've got our basic shell down. So now our form is hollow. We've got space for our board. Everything's looking sort of hunky-dory there. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is build our board supports in on our bottom. So we're going to want something that sort of supports this board structure. So one of the real easy ways to do this is that we know it's going to be contacting that surface, so we can start a sketch there. Let's bring this whole thing back. Cool. And so I'm just going to sort of support underneath the edge here is my plan. So I think we'll do that and that. So I'm going to have this extend out. Whoops. Just dropping in dimensions for me. Let's see. Let's delete that one because we want it just between this and the edge here. Got 2mm. And let's make this. Let's do a relationship. I like relationships better sometimes than picking arbitrary dimensions. So we'll actually set a tangent to that. Okay, that's a good place to start. But it's a little hefty. I think it may run into some problems actually. So let's, before we extrude this, whoops. Rather than having it be a full ring, I'm actually gonna kind of lop it here. And same here. What I'm doing is with, I don't know if this is going to show up on the video, is that if you hold right click and drag, you get sort of this quick selection menu. Right and drag to the left is a line, up is dimension, right is circle, and down is square. I tend to use this a lot. It's really fast for kind of these quick actions. So sorry if that gets confusing or if you're not seeing that. But that's generally how I'm sort of making these lines. 36 seems good. No real particular reason. I'm going to make these two horizontal and these two horizontal, and that'll constrain those. Then we can trim. We may lose some of our constraints and have to add some stuff back in, but that is okay. Let's see. We'll make these two horizontal as well. See if that does it. Let's see. Whoops. There we go. So that's what's our what's causing our thing to sort of move. But we do know that between here and here, and between here and here, we can just make these construction lines. Actually select a midpoint, right click, select midpoint, and actually kick it with the origin. See if I can get that to, there we go. I have to drag it off, select the midpoint, and then we can put it on. Progress. Oh, maybe I lost my upper dimension here. Let's try this. There we go. Nicely constrained. Cool. We're now going to extrude our sketch. So we're going to extrude down. But what we're going to do is extrude up to body and select this body. This way you can see The extrusion is going to make the correct shape sort of on that contact. But we really want to be careful where we're merging with. So we want to make sure we just do that. Whoops. Somewhere in here I lost my, there we go. I think that's right. Yeah, that looks good. Whoops. Not so good. Something happened with my contour selection. There we go. Alright. There, that's what we want. So we've got nice good supports under there. So now we're actually going to make use of these supports for two features. We're going to do it for sort of a holding feature and an alignment feature, an indexing feature. Our indexing, we're going to do a couple pins, maybe there, 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 and there. And then we're going to do some little holding tabs as well. So let's start with those holding tabs. We're going to sketch on this surface. We're going to create a circle that's just a hair bit off from this one. So maybe like, because we're going to want it to actually provide just a bit of tension. So we'll make it 0.1 millimeters away. We're then going to select these edges. And we're going to add, let's see, we'll add something like that. Maybe we'll even draw these, whoops, did not like that. Let's draw these through the center for a moment. So we'll have something like that, and something like this, and whoops. I'm really just sort of roughing these in, but everything will find its place in a moment. I'm going to pull some midpoint relationships all to the center. It's looking better already. Make sure my edges are all, whoops, got a constraint there we don't want. Still seem to have a constraint we don't want. That one. Still, maybe there's one over here too. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Let's see, between here and here, we'll do 10 degrees for these holding tabs. And same goes between these guys. Great. Can easily lock these to vertical. Whoops, something broke. There we are. I'm going to make these construction. But trim these guys. Now I'll come in and just draw in quick lines. That way all those nice relationships I set up will be maintained. From there to there. There to there. There to there. You'll see me doing this sort of like weird zoom in, zoom out thing. It's because I just don't like panning. So rather than trying to pan around, I have a tendency of just zoom in, zoom out to navigate. Just how I move through my SolidWorks space. Because it's a habit, if you will. So let's see. So let's trim away all the lines we don't need. That one. Oh, did I not? I may have not. I do need to convert those edges. Convert. There we go. So now we can trim away the things we don't need, like that and that, and that and that, and that and that, and that. That. There we go. That's looking better. Whoops. One more. There. Perfect. So I'm going to extrude. So I've got these sort of 6 little prongs. They're going to get extruded up 1.6, our thickness of our board. And they are going to merge, but they're going to merge with that. There we go. So now we've got these sort of little prongs here so that when this board fits in, it's going to sort of pop into these. It'll hold nicely and shouldn't really move around at all. But just to make sure, we're going to add one more feature. It's an indexing feature for this board that's going to fill in some of these holes. Pretty straightforward, very similar to what we just did. Just some simple pegs. But we're going to make them a little bit, they don't need to be quite as tight, I guess. So in this case, we're going to go with a offset of, don't know why it's automatically inserting dimensions for me. Dimension. There. Was not clicking. We're going to make this 0.2 millimeter offset. And we're going to throw in a couple more of these circles. So, one over here. One over here. And as I'm drawing these, I'm just sort of just getting them in, because what I can then do is just relate them all back to that one that's fully defined. But it's going to throw an error because it's putting them in with diameters. Alright, now we can extrude that little guy and his buddies. And we're going to extrude those the same 1.6, making sure we're merging with the correct. Cool. So now, just to make sort of getting this in a little easier, I'm just going to throw a very small 0.5 millimeter fillet onto these pegs. There we go. And I'm also going to throw an even smaller 0.1 chamfer onto just this edge. This 0.1 won't necessarily make a huge difference in the print, but there is a chance that it'll just sort of soften an edge and make it just a little bit easier to pop this piece in. But I need to click the edge. A lot of times in model making, when you have a sharp edge on a part and you sand it away just slightly, it's referred to as breaking the edge. And that's sort of a similar thing as to what we're doing here. There. So now we've got something that's going to hold the board in, these sort of tabs, and these pegs are going to help with the index. And then when we put on the cap and it applies pressure here, it'll also help with keeping this down. We may need, after we make this first one, we may realize that we may need some more pressure points on the board to help keep it in place as well. But that's one of those yet to be seen kind of things, something that comes out in testing. And once you do this a couple times, you sort of realize what you might need and what you're probably okay without. All right. So cool. So we have some indexing. I think the next thing we're going to do is make a hole for our port to come out the side of this. But we're going to sort of do it in a interesting way. I guess, I don't know. I was thinking about doing something more interesting with our port management than what I demonstrated in class. I might. Let's do it. So we've got our 2 shells. And as you can see, if I do a section cut here like this, as you can see, if I do a hole through the side of this to handle our cord, it's going to end up cutting through both shells, which I don't want. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It means we plug our board in and then set it down. But maybe I want to have it closed and sealed and then I plug it in. Sort of some options. So I'm actually going to do a sort of a little bit of change of how this edge interfaces, just to sort of demonstrate this technique as another option. We could just cut the hole through and roll with it, and that would be fine. But I'm going to demonstrate this other technique. It's going to make our doing some other features a little difficult, maybe. We'll find out. So for starters, I'm going to model the plug. That's sort of a good place to start in this case. So I'm going to hide both of these guys. I'm going to sketch on this face. So you would definitely want to measure your plug 100%, so that you make sure you get all of this accurate. In this case, though, I'm just going to draw myself a nice slot, but I do want my slot to be dimensioned in all the proper ways. Add dimensions. There we go. So we've got ourselves a nice slot here. Let's say it is 10 by 5. It's probably going to be centered in our port. So this port, I did both a sort of a high res and a functional version. So I've got this nice box that's still there, so I can use it to sort of help with some of my alignment. There we go. Hide that box again. Looks good. I'm going to extrude this out. Probably about 10, maybe even further. A lot of these things are pretty long. Let's go 12. And then off of this, I'm going to extrude again. And I'm going to say we've got a cord, right? So not only does your plug have a plug, but it has a cord. And we need to know both of these, in this case, I think. But it never hurts to just model this on there as well. Depends on how far your piece needs to go through the housing. Make sure it's vertical. There we go. And we'll extrude that out some arbitrary distance. Make sure we're merging it, but just with that. There we go. So now if we bring our shell back, bottom of our shell, you can see that that is where we're impacting, so we'd have to cut a hole through that. But we're going to do this slightly differently, as I said. So we're going to bring our whole shell back. We're going to sketch on the front plane. There. And we want to be on the side of our cord. So if that's our split line, right? Whoops, other side. If that's our split line there, we want this portion of the upper to actually be part of the lower, and then we'll take a hole out of it. So pretty straightforward in order to do that. In this case, we're actually going to do it as a sort of square, sort of a half slot, I think. So actually, let's do it as a slot. Yep, looks good. We're going to bring it down to like 20, maybe even less than that, 15. And let's go with 10. Alright, we're going to throw just a line across. So slots are sort of a special entity. By doing this, I've like ruined that special entity. So now everything's all wibbly wobbly, so we may have to throw in a couple little kind of relationship things. Ooh. Definitely breaking everything here. Needs to be horizontal. There we go. That's looking better, isn't it? It's like the midpoint. That. Go. And then give it a height. In this case, I'm actually just going to do an offset from that chord and give us 1 millimeter. Make sure that we have a bit of material when we cut through. Maybe even a little more. Let's do 1.5. We'll be safe. Cool, so we've got this shape. So now we're going to take this shape and we're going to go to Insert, Features. I think this will work. Split. So split, cut bodies with that shape. So now it's given us a lot to look at, but really all we need to know is that one, that one. So what we're doing is we're saying create these two distinct bodies. Cool. And so now we may have actually plopped out the other side too. But so what we have is we've got the bottom, we've got the top, the chord, we've got the top, and then we have these two little extra doodads. What we're going to do is features combine. First, let's put these two back together with the add. So now those are back together. But now we're going to do the same thing, feature combine, but we're going to add this one to the bottom here. So now what we have, if we hide the top, is we've got this sort of arc piece, which is going to be for our nice little chord hole. So in order to make the actual hole for the chord, just selecting this face, doing an offset of 0.5 millimeters, and then doing an extrude through all, but just selecting that. There we go. Perfect. Save. Remember to save. Always remember to save. Cool. So now we've got this sort of housing structure. So what I'm going to do next is do what would be for sort of a friction fit. Then I'm going to show you how to do some sort of screw mounts as well and some buttons. So let's do the friction fit next. Really pretty easy, really pretty straightforward. So let's do it on here first. So we're going to sketch on this edge surface. We're going to have this go up, I think, into our other frame. Then we'll have the other one go down. So we're going to sketch along that edge. Select the loop, other loop. Convert. So we've got them both. We're going to break those loops into two loops. So you notice I'm not working on the top here. I'm actually just going to leave this sort of smooth here. So now I'm just going to offset entities by 0.5. Select the chain. Oops, by 1, sorry. We then don't need this outer one at all. There we go. Draw a line. In addition to trim, we can extend entities, so we're going to extend that one out, just like that. Another line there, extend, trim. Oops. We want to make sure that those two are coincident. There we are. Other one looks good, perfect. So now we're going to extrude up like 1.5 millimeters. We are getting some weirdness there, as you can see. So we've got a gap, so we may have to come in and actually fill that in some way. Or we can fix it here real easily just by editing our sketch. So we know that this is going to need a bit of extra space. So what we can do is just sort of throw in a random line there and there. Some dimension. Let's go with 2. And then do an extend again. Main thing is that we aren't encountering our sort of cutaway there. And then trim those guys down. Trim, 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 trim. It is going to get a little angry at that point, but we can just find something for it to reference against nicely. So now when we do our extrude, 0.5, you'll notice that we aren't open. We are going to end up with something, I think a little, nope, all good. Was a concern of something weird happening there, but it looks pretty nice. Excellent. So now we've got this lip. So now we're going to basically make the matching feature on the other side. And what's great with doing this sort of matching feature things, we can actually use this sketch. So if I sketch on this surface, select this sketch and hit convert entities. So that's where the other one is. So we know that we want it to be basically in the same spot, but we want just a hair bit more room. So we're going to do an offset of just 0.1. And it's okay that it extends onto the inside a bit. So simple 0.1. Whoops. What I want to make sure I do is that my base geometry is for construction. There we go. Now all we have to do is extrude cut. That contour. So we're going to extrude cut ourselves up 1.5. Actually, I'm going to go 1.55. I'll show you the reason for this. So we now have that cut. Let's bring both our pieces back and do a section cut. So looking at the section cut, when we see how this fits together, these two surfaces, they're just 0.1 millimeters apart. They're actually going to rub against each other. But the advantage of leaving a little gap there, sort of at the top, is that when these come together, the surface that will contact will be this surface. We can actually do sort of the reverse as well if we want this surface to be in contact, and we can leave a little relief gap there as well. Just sort of how things are going to sit against each other. But having both surfaces contact simultaneously, something might not sit quite right. So there we go. So now we have the two housings and they'll fit together. Right now it's just sort of this pressure fit. I think what I'll do next is actually show you how to throw in a couple like ribs for strength, and if we wanted this to actually screw together, how we might go about doing that as well. One other way of doing this sort of split line thing would actually be to do the split sort of down here on the bottom. So you have a bottom plate and then this whole sort of bucket kind of structure. I'm not going to model that. I think if you guys want to try that method, please do. Maybe I'll make another video at some point if I'm feeling adventurous. But it's just another method for doing this sort of type of enclosure. Definitely feel free to try it out if that's the look you're going for. It provides a slightly cleaner look because you don't have this split line around the side. You just have this nice sort of bucket. But yeah, it's an effective method. Maybe I'll just do it anyway, just to sort of demonstrate how you might. It's definitely going to be weird being that I've sort of designed this in one way, but why not? So if we were going to do this sort of bucket method, what we might do is we'd start on the top like this. We'd do a sketch on the top, and maybe we'd select this sort of inner area. Sort of inside the fillet here. This is what happens. I debate on whether showing things and decide in the end it's just better to show you. So we'll do it. Cool. So I'm going to convert entities. So now I have that line. See if I can get my split to only go in one direction this time. Feature split. Target bodies in this case is just going to be that one. We're going to say cut. We're going to end up with 1, 2. So now I can hide this bottom plate. So now we've got the opening. What's weird is what's odd with this is that all the board support features are now on this bottom plate, which isn't something you might necessarily do. I guess you could. A lot of times what you would do is like the board would drop in like this and then you'd fit this sort of plate on. So the board would index maybe into something on the top there. But I guess it works. So what we need now with this method is that we need basically a ledge for this to sort of sit on. So that when it fits in, it actually kind of catches. So in order to do that, there are sort of a couple ways. I'm trying to figure out the best way, being that this shape is not completely flat, which makes this just a hair bit trickier, to be honest. Let's see. I think what I might do, the outer one, actually kind of tricky. Put myself in a slight conundrum as I'm trying to figure out a way of doing this without showing you like a ton of new techniques that you don't necessarily sort of get complicated. But right now, probably the easiest way, being that this is actually a straight shape that way, we're going to try this. So we're going to sketch on the front plane, but in a section cut view, like that. And we're going to select kind of this bottom edge here. And we're going to do a convert entities. Okay. That works. Now we're going to do an offset of these. Reverse their direction by 1 millimeter. We're going to leave everything as regular. There we go. Okay. It's looking pretty good. All right. Okay. We'll see if this works. So, what I'm trying to do, is I'm going to try to extrude this up to the edge, so we basically get sort of this like 1 millimeter thick skin that I can then poke a hole in, and that will give us kind of this ledge, I think. Or I might use it as a cut body to remove from the other piece, and then we'll add in another one or something. We'll see how this goes. I usually go into things like this with just a bit more planning, I guess, is the best way I could put it. Maybe we'll do an up to next. This may not work at all. Come out of the section cut. Alright, so we're going to go, if I ask it to do up to body, don't merge the result. I think it's going to throw an error. Yep. How about up to next? I think the error is coming from somewhere on the edges. Might even be able to just do a kind of a weird series of operations. Sorry if this sort of gets strange, but this will work in the end. Sometimes this stuff takes a bit of time and cleverness and planning. Planning definitely goes a long way in your design, which is something I'm not doing here that I would normally be under normal circumstances. There we go. Alright, so we're not going to merge this result, so we've got this weird, whoops, I totally specified a vertex. There we go. Now it wants me to specify this one again. It's like dropping vertices. Wonderful. May not like it because I'm clicking. Let's see. These things can go beyond a bit too. There. Be happy. Aha! So we now have this weird little like 1 millimeter sheet, I guess. I can make use of my split line to trim it down to size. So there's this wonderful flip side to cut through all. So now you can see this little arrow over here is going to cut outside, which is what we want. So we're going to select the body. So boom, there's that one. So now we've got a 1 millimeter as well as the actual one, which is the 2 millimeter thick. So now we're going to take this split cut sketch again. split, cut, sketch, split, cut, sketch, split. Wherever that sketch was. Actually, just there we go. So we're going to sketch on the top plane. We're going to take that sketch, convert entities. So that's our edge, right? So that's the edge of our sort of hole. We're now going to do an offset of this whole thing. Reverse. Let's do 2 millimeters. Yeah. We're going to do an extrude cut. Whoops. We want this to be construction. We're going to do an extrude cut through all, just that one. All right, progress. So now we've got this sort of edge. So what I'm going to do is merge this, or actually remove this from the other one, I think, and then sort of create another one of the. Oh man, this is just an awful way of doing this. Yeah, I sort of did this backwards, didn't I? Yep, totally backwards. Let me fix this. So what I realized I've done is really this needs to be on the inner set, because then what I can do is I can remove it from the other one and then merge it to this body and everything will be happy, I guess. This has sort of gotten itself quite complicated, hasn't it? So let's go back a bit. Shouldn't be too much trouble because we are in a parametric modeling piece of software. Lets us make some adjustments. So edit our sketch here. So back to our section cut. So we've got this 1 millimeter thick thing here. So what we're actually going to do is select this guy, and we're going to make sure we get the whole chain. Select the chain. Don't know why it's not showing more of it. Hopefully it will work. Or not. I so do love when things are weird. Actually, we can just select the actual lines, right? The inner edge. So probably all the complexity here has probably deterred half of you from doing this method, but in general, it actually can produce quite nice results. So we now have this. What I can do is break the edges here. I'm actually just going to leave this lower one just in case we need it for something. But I am going to make it construction and then join this to here and that to there. Great. All right, we've got a problem. Let's see if we can figure out what the problem is. Could be something's open. Could be something's not quite construction-y enough. Let's see if it'll show us the problem. Sketch has one or more open contour somewhere. So this tool, in theory, is repair sketch. I don't even know if this is showing up. The little repair sketch window usually shows up and sort of indicates where an issue might be. There may be something, if we zoom in really far, we can figure out where two things are not quite touching, maybe. So it looks like we've got a weird kind of thing going on there. Or maybe another one over here. Let's see if there we go. That looks better. Hey! Look at that. And parametrics to the rescue. And everything should be okay. Look at that. Wonderful. So now we've got this lip in the right place. Finally. So now what we want to do is basically remove this lip from this part. And then add it to that. Which we can do with insert features. And we're going to go to combine again. In this case, we want to subtract. Our main body is this one, and our body just, whoops, it doesn't like it that I'm in the section cut is what's going on. Alright, so insert features, combine, subtract. So our main body is that one, and our other edge is going to be, our body to subtract is that edge. Cool, so now if we look at this again, we've got that sort of groove. I can't remember, it may actually totally remove that body, which is really unfortunate because we need it. Is there a consume? A lot of times there's a thing called consume cut bodies. Does exactly what we need it to do. We just lose our body that we need to merge back in. No. I may have pickled myself here this evening. Let's see if we can figure this out. I'm wondering if a different feature may allow us to do this just slightly better. Oh, I know how to do this. So we're actually not going to use the combine yet, or in that way, I guess. So what we're going to do is we're going to combine. We're actually going to do an add combine. So we're going to combine and add. So we're going to combine our outer with that edge. Cool. Then I think we should be able to use it in some way. Alright, so now that edge is merged nicely. So what we can do, I'm going to try this. So we're going to sketch on our top plane. We're going to select all of these faces. Or at least the edges. Let's see if we can just get the loop. Maybe not. Fair enough. May have to do some weird deleting there. Or we can just use previous sketches, which would make way more sense, right? That one.